Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Dream Labs. I am Dr. Contrast, and we're live. So sorry for the delay this afternoon here, folks. I just had a bit of a minor situation come into play, and I want to make sure we got that resolved. But here we are, ready to go, and we're at it, and hopefully all things will work out pretty well here for us today. I just want to take a quick moment to wish all of you a very happy new year. Hope it's all coming together nicely for you. Just good news to be back on the air, and today's going to be an exciting day. I think for me, it's a nice start, new fresh start. We spent some time about maybe a month ago, just before the holiday, about doing a program on basic marker technique. And I thought we'd take a moment today, and I want to be very careful. I want to start this program today with a very sincere announcement. I'm going to do all I can to keep it very non-intimidating, very simple, but at the same time, hopefully instructive enough to get us started on the whole process. And I think when I put it all together, I think it's going to be more of a 3 to 4 week program in terms of getting the situation down about technique, because it's such a, for lack of a better term, such an intimidating, almost frightening process to go through with marker, because once it's down, it's down. But there are methods to safeguard how the whole thing operates, and it really is a good process to deal with, and I think it's a great medium to deal with as well, because you can actually treat it like watercolor in some cases, airbrush in some cases, and just a good old-fashioned sketch rendering process. So hopefully this will work out well, and looking really good. So let's take a minute here. And I thought we'd start the program today with the whole concept of when it all begins with understanding the light source, primary component. The second element that's most important to kind of work with that light source is the understanding the geometry of the 5 basic solids. So even though this is a pencil sketch, I do want to let you know that there are certain things that the solids will reveal to us in terms of how to work with the actual process of getting into marker technique. And if you notice, for example, I just want to take a moment here to review this page. It's in pencil, yes, but each one of those solids, if you look at them very carefully, there's a very definite constitution in terms of what they all encompass and what they hold and what they embody. And I think when you begin to understand how these operate and what light source does with them, and you start combining, for example, some, hey, hello, Antares, how are you? Very sorry for the delay here. Just had a technical problem before we started, and I'm going to take your page here today. Hope, by the way, Happy New Year to you. Hope all has gone well for you over the course of the past few weeks, and I hope you had a great Christmas. So thank you for joining me today. And I'm going to take my time here to go really through some basic elements here, probably about a 3 or 4 part process to make sure we get it all taken care of. And I think the most important part to start with here is you understand, as we said about a month ago, when we begin this whole process about working with marker technique, it's imperative to understand what light source does, how it functions, and what it does to certain shapes and what geometries. And the geometry of the 5 solids here, even though this is in pencil, we'll show you as we go down the line here what happens when you move into marker technique. So today I'm going to concentrate on light source specifically and methods. So then we'll start from there, light source into the shape, then we'll go into multiples and multiples and multiples. And I think the 4-part series, we're going to have a light source first, and then the hand technique, how that works. And then secondly, for the 3rd part, gesture methods, how to make it much more animated, and last but animation. And you'll find out as we go down the line here, you're going to see a lot of open space areas, for example, in marker. It's not used as a fill-in system. It's not used as just a technique to kind of block it all in. It can be a very effective, powerful tool in terms of letting the paper work for us, but at the same time, knowing where to place the emphasis. That's the reason for starting with the geometric solids. So, doing well, and thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a good new year. So far, so good, but I'm really happy to be back on board, and I'm delighted to have you on board. And by the way, before I forget here too, Antares, cannot thank you enough for the sketches you sent along in your most recent email. Really well done. I mean, you can tell there's a lot of confidence in what you're doing and putting together now. So, pardon me just a moment. I'm just really experiencing some really throat problems here, so I'll do the best I can to clarify as we go. But it's so cool to see the work you're doing, Terrence. It's just changed dramatically, and I think that the technique is great. You mentioned in your email it was a little bit wobbly in terms of some areas. That, to me, is a very nice thing to have, and especially in architectural sketches. I've worked with some great architects, for example, over the years that have a very, very good hand, but they also use that very kind of squiggly, almost freehand line to it. So don't let that be an impediment to you. Let that build on that, but the actual use of the media is great. The sketches look terrific, and I cannot thank you enough for being a part of the process here today and taking advantage of your skill set to improve them every time you go through it. They're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So congratulations, and keep up the great work. So back to square one here. These solids, as I said, have a very specific constitution. Once you understand how those constitutions really work, it's amazing what happens when you start to put together combinations together. We'll get into that as programs go down the line here from week to week to week. But notice, for example, how they all begin to happen, for example. And I have a habit of getting into things, for example, working with, and this is a Meadism. Sid Mead was phenomenal with this, going from light to dark and how to understand how light source works. And before I begin this conversation in light source, I want you to know, too, there are 3 dimensions of light that we have to deal with in the creative world. Number 1 is the dimension of direct light. Right, left, behind you, for example, never behind you because it casts a shadow. I mean, in front of you because it casts a shadow towards you and destroy the actual page itself or the format. So it's direct light source. Second is ambient light, the environment around it, for example, and how that affects the program. And the last one is reflective light, what happens on a surface once it goes into a light source, from light direct into ambient and into reflective light. So you'll see here in action in pencil, and we'll show you a marker in a moment here, in pencil, what that begins to do. And look at each one of these. It's light to dark, light to dark, light to dark, light to dark, light to dark. Very definite constitutions and geometries and so forth. And here's a little bit more expanded view here to show you, for example, when you switch a light source, for example, you can go from light source to light source. It depends on where that light source is. And I think over the years, I've noticed too, and I think this is probably something that might be worthwhile discussing. Most people I work with, corporate, individuals, seminars, workshops, they have a real conflict with light source. There's a mystery about it. And I think they try to utilize it way too strongly in terms of trying to make sure that this is light, this is dark, this is medium. That is an old school, and I hope that I'm not being threatening here or discouraging to each one of you. That's an old school process, but it begins to destroy the animation or the magic in putting together a marker study or a composition. And marker is a great method. I mean, I've just been so fortunate to have been tutored by Sid Mead over the years and other, Jack Andrews, giants. I mean, great, incredible individuals that knew this craft so well. And I'm going to try and project those onto you sometime throughout the course of this whole series. So again, notice how they all work. And then magnify again. Notice a lot of paper going through in each one of these, and that's the magic to it all. Why I brought that up at this time, why paper is so significant, it's just for this reason. You'll get the base down, you'll get the basic shell, the geometry down. Then we're going to bring in multiple materials, for example, like pencil definition or pastel definition to fill in the blanks, to give it more of a freedom or an actual captured effect of being very powerful and strong. So, and again, we'll get into these later. These are combinations of putting the solids together, how to integrate them. You've heard me use this comment before, and I think you'll hear it throughout the course of the next few weeks, that the magic of it all is it starts with light source. Understand the constitution of the geometric solids. Third, once that happens, begin to integrate them and then separate them. Once you know what they're doing, you can integrate and separate these guys and begin to really create some really unique new forms. And I think you've seen that happen in your own career path, I think, Valdemar and Terrace, that you've seen some things happen as a result of being able to take these very complicated elements, simplify them, and then the idea is to take the complex and make it simple. Break it down. Then take the simple and make it complex. It's just we're going to go through the next few weeks here with this whole process. So I want to start here with this. I'll come back to this maybe in reference in time in future references here. But there it is. That's the basic solids and the geometry and the description of it, why that's a critical thing to know. And there it is. There's phase one. Now we're going to go back in here and let's go down the line here. This is just a basic, simple methodology process here today. Conversation is how to begin to think about what to do with a marker in hand and how to begin to place that to places here. So notice, these are just basic cubes, and I thought with one of the solids, which I think is the most difficult one to illustrate, quite frankly. The other ones you can cheat with. This one, you can cheat with this one, but it's really a difficult one to get a hold of, especially when you move into the process of working with it. Now notice, in red, you'll notice the direction, for example. We're going to talk a lot about direction with light source. In each one of these examples, for example, the light source is coming from the left-hand side. So when you go with that process, notice you go light to dark. So you'll begin to fade, fade, and fade. And then on the body sides, for example, on the verticals, you'll see that light source goes from light to dark, then from dark to light. Why? We'll show you that in a moment. Going back to said a few moments ago, with this whole idea of light source, it's critical. Direct light, ambient light, reflected light. And again, direct, ambient, reflected. And that's what happens to us. I mean, those three elements or engagements really underscore the power of putting together a very fluid, simple, dynamic sketch of any unit you're dealing with. And while I'm at it too, I think it's always good to know that darkest darks next to lightest lights. You've heard that before as well. So I think, and again, third axiom, I mean, you're working with these guys. No matter what the subject matter is, in working with marker technique, or in multimedia techniques, always remember the golden rule. All things vertical, render vertically. All things horizontal, render horizontally. It keeps it honest, and it keeps it very simple. And you're shifting planes, and I realize too, while I go through this conversation here today, that not all things, for example, are identical. Here's my point. The point I'm trying to get across with this first introduction series here today is this, that the products we begin to visualize or see will change, but the process does not. That remains constant. Product change, process constant. Very, very simple. It's finite, so we go from there. So let's look at this. Again, each case, light to dark, light source out here to the left, coming back in, going from light to dark, and then obviously dark to light, away from the light source. Now that light part is, again, reflected light. And the ambient light goes the same way. It's direct to ambient, and so on. So it's all part of the process. And when I'm going through any given sketch, I'm almost uppermost about where my light source is. And I'll be the first one to admit, it's kind of a shameful thing to admit, but I'll take light source and cheat the daylights out of it. Why? Because light, according to Sid Mead's doctrine, light is always in motion. It'll move throughout the entire matrix that you're dealing with. That's important to know. So you can actually, I don't mean cheating, for example, you massage it or reapply it or replace it. Again, darkest darks next to lightest lights. And that's an old Rembrandt process too. Look at his artwork or his paintings. It's all there, the master of light. He was an actual proponent that took into this whole idea. He, Michelangelo, other great masters had that principle down. Number one, light source. Number two, understand the solids. Number three, work with them as individual pieces and bring them all together. So there's that. Now, same with this one, same view. Again, light to dark, dark to light. Same thing. It's a 1-point cube, 2-point cube, leading edge, and the facing plane in red, and so on. Again, 1-point perspective again. Light source from behind, light source, and then light to dark. And it's that very flat plane. As you come in from the left-hand side, that's what it begins to do. So there's the first demonstration. Let's put these side by side if we can. Let's put these together here if we can get these to work. Now, this is where it starts to happen with, oops, let me get this all set up here. So far, so good. Antares, am I going too quickly? Extending things pretty good here. Let's just put these together if we can here. Just barely made it. Okay. Antares, any questions so far? I mean, I hope I'm describing the process cleanly here. I'll wait for a moment, just get your response just a bit. Again, this will be an idea here, getting into some of this whole idea of keeping everything in one shape, for example, and keeping it all together and utilizing this whole diagram, the geometry together, so it works. Okay, Antares, any commentary at all so far? This is where you are with the direction process. This is where we are with the application process. Notice again, light to dark, then dark to light. Same thing here, light to dark, and you saturate it in, and I'll show you in a few moments what that method looks like when you start to saturate in to a certain shape or a form. So again, notice again, in a 1-point perspective, again, light source out here to the left, and again, it's a lot of info, but I think well, should I slow down a little bit and just kind of take it one piece at a time here? I don't want to get too complicated here in order to become intimidating. So let me go back and review here. Let me just kind of reduce it down to this. Today's discussion will be with light source, the geometric solids, and a little bit of technique. That's it. But to get to that station, I want to make sure we clarify which ones are which. Again, this is a very simple page here to deal with. Again, the principle of getting the idea down of going from light to dark, and why it begins to reflect in the back corners here is essential. And the whole process, Antares, when it's all said and done, and others who might be viewing, it always comes down to keeping your sketches animated, vibrant, alive, giving it spizorinctum, or spirit. So, again, here's the basic. So let me just get rid of this guy. Let's get rid of this beauty for a moment and put that up here. So let's get that out of the way. Here it is, in marker. There she is there. It comes right out of the way. Let me get this out of the way. I'm sorry. Put these over here. Now, marker. Again, light to dark, dark to light. Moving through the matrix here. And I'll show you in a moment how that method comes together here. So that's an application. Page 2, taking that same process and putting it into some application, very simple, let me just do this, get my hands all squared away here. Getting into some very simple applications of, okay, there it is in block form, and there we are. Let's move this over just a little bit here. And there it is. All right, there should be. So there you go. Here's a good example. Now notice again how you use that same saturation process. If I can get that to work just a little bit better here. Get these both on the same, helpful to bring it together here. Very simple. Basic geometry, light to dark to light, etc. This one, again, notice again the shape, very simple surface delineation on two very simple shapes. But at the same time, notice, again, light to dark to light. A little bit of shadow, light to dark to light. Surface change. Notice this surface here, this parabolic curve, away from your light source. So it's going to get a lot, it's going to go darker. So there we are. Again, notice this plane changes. It's a radius, for example. But again, it sits on a very horizontal. So again, all things horizontal, render horizontally. Even though it's a curved plane, it's in a horizontal format. So you go horizontally with it. And again, from light, dark to light. Same with this one. Notice, same process here again. Light to dark, etc. Again, shadow area here. Look at that. How that. This is all with a number 2 marker, by the way. You can create marker saturation with a 2 down to a 4. A 4 gray, cool gray, down to a 6. So you can keep staining it in, keep staining it in, keep staining it in. Works so methodically and simple. So that's a good example of getting a simple, how to use that number 2 gray, number 2 cool gray, to delineate a shape or a simple form from this principle over here. Light to dark, same process. Always, it does not change. Let's do it this way. Let's put this over here. Now the next one. Now, pure marker. Interesting how that happens. Look how that begins to change here. It's a good example of what we're talking about here today. Again, notice, cylinder, round form. Very difficult thing to work with, I think, because you have a tendency to fill it all in. You go from one side to the other. Not necessarily the case. Notice this is a number 2 cool gray. Again, notice again how with my light source being out here, and again out here from the left-hand side, look what happens here. I go from light to dark, but there's a little sneaky thing here. Notice what happens right in through here. I'm not going right to the edge, and I'm not going right to the edge. I leave a little bit of highlight here, into the core, into highlight over here. It gives you much more, it lets the eyeball move around that shape much more freely and doesn't lock you in. Notice down below here, same thing vertically, now going horizontally. Light source above, light to dark, and again, that little line down here, that white area in there is reflected light. It comes back up and gives you a little more dimension on that basic cylinder. So that's so far as where we are as far as that technique goes. Now let's take a look at this guy here. The next one in the conical form. Notice working with the geometry. Let me just kind of put this together here. Just put these in here. That goes there, sort of here for the paper shuffle. And again, notice, same process again. Let's get these guys lined up here. There we are. Same process again, very simple. Again, light source, light to dark, back to light. Light to dark, back to, again, a little bit of reflected light down below makes a huge difference when it all comes together for us here. So, so far so good. Again, I just want to make sure, Antares, that we really take a look at how things are moving in terms of how it all comes together, and what really begins to matter in terms of how to pick up the certain things to deal with and make a strong statement on paper. So, how are we doing, Antares? Clarifying a little bit better for us, hopefully? Yeah, there's a lot of information, and I knew that going into this first one would be really a bit of a stretch, but I want to make sure we cover those bases. Again, the whole topic today is light source, and how we do that with direction, and how it all comes together so nicely here with us as we go from one step to another here. So, so this principle of things getting lighter as they recede is the influence of ambient and reflected light, creating a kind of atmosphere that envelopes the form, and the closest part draws are exactly correct. That's what causes the phenomenon of giving it more dimension. Principle of things getting lighter as they recede. As they move away from you, it picks up reflected light and ambient light, and then all of a sudden it changes the entire dynamic. And another way to say that too, in Terrace, is this. If we fill it all in, you lose that drama. If you fill it all in with one color or a combination of colors, light, medium, dark, you lose that magic of it being an animated shape or a very solid surface. So that's why I chose to go with this. Again, that was a meatism. Light to dark, dark to light. That's what light will do. So yeah, you're absolutely correct in that comment you made there. That's great. You'll see it happen here in a moment here. So there it is, another example of getting that whole idea of light to dark, light to dark, light to dark, and then light to dark. So light to dark, pardon me. There it is. So in the last one, it's a nice little simple study here that does the following. Put this in sequence. That does this. Again, getting into compound forms. Again, notice the difference in saturation levels again here. Just kind of put this together, kind of get that all lined up. Again, light source. Come over here on the left-hand side again, and what it does is the following. Light, it goes from being a compound shape again. It's horizontal, but it goes light to dark, light to dark, dark to light. Again, reflected light. That's the process of coming together here. Goes so far, draws our eye. There you are, got it. Super. Vertical, same thing, very compound shape. Again, behind us, light source into shadow behind it. And again, coming into light, into dark, and then light into dark, vertical plane. So there's a basic combination of things we've been dealing with here over the last few go-arounds. And I think it's just interesting to kind of take a look at that as a sequence of series. And again, let's put a piece of paper in here. And let's take a look at very simple things here to kind of work with to get started. Again, this is again method. I'm going to use a pen here, just to create a couple of surfaces to kind of deal with, and much more of like a horizontal shape, and then again with a vertical shape. Show how this all operates. So you've got those two coming together. Let's say my light source is out here to the left-hand side. My light source coming in, for example, in both cases. Now, this might be a little strange to work with here, but this again is a horizontal surface, so I'm going to treat that horizontally by doing the following. Come back in here and start reversing this thing and go from dark to light toward the light source. And watch my hand application here. Got it. Like you were saying at the time about having movement in a sketch to keep it alive, applied to behavior. Exactly correct. Great stuff, Terrace. You've got it going nicely here. You keep it alive by being very simplistic. Now, with the broad part of the tip, hand motion, very simple. I'm going to reverse my hands here. I'm going to come down on the stroke and begin to pick up a dark, saturate it, weave back in, saturate it. As I move toward light source, release it. One more time. Dark to light to light. I can come back in and just fill in very lightly here. And again, one more time here, darker. And again, vertically. Notice I'm working backward into that whole process. The reason for doing that is, let's say for example, you're going to take a shape, and you've got going back into it in certain forms here. You're going to deal with the shapes, and you start to elevate or create into it. The drawing back into it does an awful lot. Again, notice how the addition of getting a drawing on top of that begins to give that whole feeling of going from light to dark much more presence to it. And while I'm at it, you can come back in and add things like this. A little high contrast. This would be a good example. Again, notice, we've said this, we'll say this throughout the course next few weeks. Darkest darks next to lightest lights. Next to darkest darks, next to darkest darks, lightest lights, so on. Look at that. Neat little sketch, right? Helping, I mean, it's not great, but nonetheless it works. Same thing here. Let's go to hand technique again. Make sure it doesn't bleed out. I'm going to turn it sideways. I'm going to go from dark back to light source by doing the following. Saturate, bring it through, and as you go to light source, release it. Release it. Release it. And the leading edge, highlight. Back to this guy, dark to light, dark to light. There you go. If I finish that shape out, there it is right there. Go back in and add a little bit of line weight in this thing. Got it. And add a little bit of this, add a little bit of that. there you go. So here we are. Same with this guy. Let's go back in and do the same thing with this one. And there it is, little product sketch. Nonetheless, very, very loose and animated. Not a lot of things here. Got it like you were saying last. Yep, there we go. Come back into this leading edge here. Take it around the corner. What do you do with a shape like that? Very simple. Come back in. And since you're going from light to dark, again, it goes dark, horizontally, up into highlight. And again, let's play that same game. Darkest darks. And there you are. Simple little form studies there that hopefully get the job done for us. What do you think, gang? So far, so good? Is this helping, Antares? See how it all begins to apply now? We took a little bit further by drawing back into it yet, but I think just fairness to you, instead of having just planes or people who are viewing here today, to see this being a series of planes and studies makes a huge difference in terms of putting together a really good, solid program for shape and the whole idea of getting this marker technique down. And even there, once it dries, watch what happens, sir. You can come back in. Once it dries, come back in and resaturate it. Go a little bit darker. Deeper. Release. Deeper. Release. See how it just kind of fades it down nicely? And the idea, if you look at this very carefully, what this process does for us, put this over here, what this process does for us, so far so good, I think. Well, I hope I'm not confusing here. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and we'll go back and make sure to review these things from moment to moment, and Terrace, no question about that. What have I confused you by, for example? I apologize if that's the case. Anybody? What can I clarify for you here? As far as so far so good, you think? Is there something I didn't explain well, or should I go back and slow down a little bit here? Concept today: the solids, how to work with light, and how to work with hand technique in some small way. A little sneak preview into hand technique. It's so important. Hand technique is everything. Getting into a blending process is that really begins to take advantage once you understand how to work with these guys. Notice very quickly too. You have to make very quick decisions. I'll hold on for a moment here on Terrace until you make a response. Hopefully. I'm a little unsure how you determine what to render vertically on something like a cube. Okay, on a cube, let's do that. And you have a certain situation here. Let's get rid of this paper here. We'll use it as an underlay. I'll go back and let's do that. On a cube, let's kind of get that squared away. Let's go back and get that all set up here. Determine what to render vertically and horizontally. Okay. Let's go back in here. And get these shapes lined up. Now, this would be a horizontal plane, vertical plane, vertical plane. All set? So what happens here is learning how to, again, this comes into a little bit of hand control in terms of working with some of this stuff here. When you reverse that, let's say your light source is, again, over here, coming into the left-hand side. Rotate the pad, come back in and work dark to light. Come back in here first and stop at that target line. So I'm going to go dark to light. Same thing here. Dark, again, vertically, dark to light. Again, same thing here. Light to dark. Dark to light. Helping it all? Antares, so go back and hit it again. Dark to light. Dark to light. Again, dark horizontally. Vertically. Vertically. Helping? That gives you a little bit of, now notice you get a bit of a 50-50 bleed in there, but once it dries, you come back in again and just rotate a little bit. Take a little further and release it. Take a little further and release it. And that all begins to happen. What do you think here? Is that making sense now, Antares? Just slow it down a little bit. Let's see how that operates. Hope that was a better demonstration or a better description. Sorry for the delay here. I just thought we'd take a quick minute and take a peek at it. Hope this made much more sense for you, Antares, hopefully. Again, it's making that decision, for example, of how to break the planes up. And again, that's all light source dictated. It's all part of the process. Oh, okay, yes, I think so. If the surface is standing vertically, you render it with you're absolutely correct. You got it. That's it. And if it's horizontal, you go with horizontal, for example. But here's another good one. If it's a curved surface, if it's a plane that does this, now, that's a different dilemma. A bit of a bend plane to it, but again, in a case like this, let's say my light source is, again, from the left-hand side. I'm going to treat that surface by doing this. I'm going to go from dark to light by doing the following. Turn it just a little bit. Again. This is basically a horizontal surface, correct? It's laying horizontally. So I'm going to go horizontal with this. We're going to go dark. And then right into light. Dark. One more time to saturate into light. Again, dark into light. Dark toward the light. And once I begin to fill those in, soft touch. Again, one more time to saturate. Dark. Release. So it takes it on through, helping. Ladder plane, use strokes, horizontal, yeah, that's right. You got it. The direction of the light. 9 degrees to it, absolutely correct. And for a flatter plane, use strokes are horizontal and perpendicular to the direction. Yep, perpendicular, right to it. Again, dark, back to light. Again, notice how you begin to saturate again. I said earlier in the presentation, you can take a number 2 gray and tone it right down to a 4. Which is this is starting to do. See the difference in variation there? And there it is. Same thing over here. A little bit of highlight in this guy. Yeah, let's go back in through here again. Dark. Into light. There we go. And again, let's take advantage of this shape here. Again, the idea. And there it is. Simple little product sketch. There you go. Got it. There she is. That's how it operates. Again, notice that as bad as these sketches are, let's kind of line them up a little bit here. These are very poor sketches, but nonetheless, let's take a peek at them here. What have you noticed about them? Have you noticed how there's a certain blend in there? It's certainly not, the best way to describe that, let me just show you what I mean. There's a blend, for example. It transitions. It goes nice, smooth transitions. Again, I'll get into next week hand control, how that's so critical of how it all comes together. When you hand control is really precise. And there's a method to go forward, backward, using the chisel, to rotate the chisel to get certain feels to it. That's all going to come. As I said today, I don't want to get into a situation where I confuse anybody here. I'm going to take my time and do a nice job of trying to describe. The point today of today's stream is this. Very simple 3 points. Number one, you've got a light source. Light source to deal with, and 3 components of that light source. Number one, direct light. Number 2, ambient light. Number 3, reflective light. It's all being displayed in these little thumbnail sketches. They're not very good, but I'm trying to get a point across about how to deal with light source. Number 2, how to deal with the solids, what their geometry is, how to deal with them, how to let them go, where to saturate, where to release, where to move in and where to move out. Let hand control become part of that. And this is only about the first part of the demonstration on hand control. What's coming is a lot more elusive and a lot more concise in terms of working with the actual marker itself. Great stuff to work with. And again, there's a blending method here that I think looks, let me ask you a question. Do these sketches, as poorly as they are done, do they look smooth in transition? Question again, do they look smooth in transition? If not, I failed. It wouldn't be the first time. Anybody? I'll just wait for a conversation here. Anybody? To me, it's very solid today. If we accomplish anything here in today's stream, it's to get those elements put together and create smooth transitions. There you go. That's not much appreciated, Terrace. That really helps. That's much helpful here. Let's go the other way. Let's kind of keep these guys together for just a moment here. Let's get rid of some paper. We'll keep these in review here. Get these out of the way. And we'll put them over here. And let's do something else here. Let's use a marker as a sketch tool. Very interesting to me as far as I'm concerned. So let's go back and use it just a mark as a sketching tool. So let's do this. Let's come back in and let's get some of the more compound shapes here to work with. Let's go back into a cylinder. If I go back in here and I create this shape, come back in and sketch with it very lightly, and open that up. And again, same process. Down below, I'm going to come up. Notice I come up, and just a little bit above that shape. Why? That's reflected light, and that white area is reflected light. We come back in through here, and again, notice I turn the blade over, not that way, but that way. I came back in, up in the light source, streak, done. There I am. That's done. That's it. I'll come back in. If it's a flat surface, come back down below again. Back to light source. One more saturation here. There it is. Let's let that dry a little bit. We'll come back in again and hit it. And again, same process here. Again, outboard line, step inboard. See that little bit of highlight in there? That little bit of highlight tells me where that spot is going to become. There she is, right there. All set. Come back in again. Outside of that. Now, dark to light. Again, same process. Dark. Yeah, right. All set. There it is. How simple that sketch is. Helping, gang? Let's go back into this again. We'll draw back into them. One more time. Saturate it. Drawing back in. Look at the definition you're getting there. Is that making sense, guys? What's the purpose of the streak on top of the cylinder? Which, I mean, this one here, Antares, which one, right or left? I'll just hold on here for a moment. Well, I hope this has been helpful overall. I really hope this has been helpful. What is the purpose of the streak on the top of the cylinder? Yeah, I just need to help you clarify which one you're talking about here, Tara, so I can define it. Yeah, the one on the left. All right, so over here, this one, the purpose of this line right here, that's just a little bit of highlight core, for example, coming over the top of the, if my light source is out here, highlight, a little bit of a bit of a core change, and then into light source again, and then into the actual body of the form, the actual core down below, darker, and into it. Again, notice one more time, pass this in here. Look at that, there it is, little thumbnail sketch. Does that help to clarify it? Hopefully what that line was, that's a little bit of highlight up on top there, as much as this is too. Let me finish this one off. And a little bit darker cap. Let's draw back in and define a little bit more. Let's define this a little bit more. Should we get that? Now, does that help? Ah, I see. So we add a streak to indicate the boundary of the light. Yeah, there it is. The boundary of the highlight. That's exactly right. Highlight, boundary, into a little bit of highlight boundary, and then into the body of the form. Let's go back in and detail these guys. A little bit of sketch. There you go. A couple little thumbnail sketches, again with marker. And again, adding a bit of media to it. Just kind of clarify some things here before I move ahead into next week's program and the like. So let me stop there just for a moment and review. What do you think, gang? Making sense at all overall, or how are we doing here? A lot of complications here in terms of going into surfaces and the idea of putting together the forms and shapes. I understand that, but again, for those of you who are tuning in maybe a little bit late, the whole purpose of today's stream, it's going to be a long, I'd say about maybe 3-4 sessions on marker technique and how to work with it, how to work with them rather. But today's stream was just really interesting how working with 1 or 2 or 3 elements. Number one, the light source, which is 3 components. Light source, which is direct, ambient, and reflective. Also the geometric solids, how to put them together. And then working with direction, how to work with light source in terms of directing light across shapes and how to create form. The question here for interested. I learned the technique of blocking a solid shadow shape, rendering coarse shadow, midtones, reflected in light, etc. But it always produced quite a sterile result. I can see why. I think that's a method. You're referring to the fill it all in kind of process, Terence. That's a pretty common setup in academia and how things are taught, which I think is, it works, but it also flattens things out. It doesn't have any spirit to it or any life. So it's hard to deal with in terms of putting that all together here. So what do you think? Making sense? Really, a lot of material here today, folks. I really appreciate your patience. I do not want to burn us out in terms of a lot of technique and the like. But I think, last but not least, just going to wrap it up here with just some very simple little, get rid of some of these pages and shapes and get saturate the paper. Use it as a bleed sheet underneath here a little bit. Once again, take a look at just, again, very simple, how to deal with forms. Working with the marker, sketch with it. Simple shapes. Again, back to the horizontal, and now the vertical. Again, just work with that marker, etc. A little bit of highlight on the outside of that, just enough to stream there. A little bit of highlight on the outside of that, just to stream it there. Now, again, light source out here. Again, backhand, it work backwards, dark to light. Stay in it. Stay in it, and as you go back, lighten up the pressure. 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 One more time. Pressure. And to weave it and simplify it, smooth it out, and go from there. Look how that just kind of takes your transition out. That all is going to be covered up. What's coming here in the next few streams, just what's coming in the next few streams are getting this first process down. Hand technique, direction, etc., light source. Then we'll start adding things like compound form, adding media to it. Again, that's why you see a lot of these clear out areas here. There's method to the madness. What's coming finishes the shape off without choking it or destroying it or giving it less character. Same thing again, vertical, go back in, dark to light. So even when my lights out here, I'm going to work in reverse and go from dark to light, come up, tone it in, pressure change, pressure change, pressure change, pressure change, and release it. Draw it back in. It's almost like a 50-50 there, so we'll take a little bit further. Darker. Into that, and just a touch more to kind of release it. There it is. The more smoothness to it. There it is. There she be. And when you come back in and start to delineate those shapes, like we said earlier before, adding not so much, not making something out of it, but looking at it from the point of view of, all right, here we are. Putting definition lines in place. Drawing through it. And a hard shadow break in there. And again, go back to that same marker. What happens here? Get that same marker. I'm going to create a shadow in here. Light source, shadow. saturate, release. Again, one more time, shadow. Look how you can force those areas, very subtle as it is, but that's what you really want to make sure of that's happening here as you go. So let's go back into this one, a little bit of definition. Something like just taking a simple plane and just bringing it to life. So hopefully these have been very helpful. I hope you too. Let's put these guys together here. Just there we are, and there should be little thumbnail sketches based on 3 simple principles in today's stream. Number 1, again, sorry to be redundant, light source. So critical. A light source is phenomenal in terms of what it does, how it tells you how to go back through the direction. Let's go back into this just for a moment and review. Light source is absolutely amazing because, as I did in that first few sketches here, let me kind of dig this one out. This one sets the pattern up. That guy right there sets the pattern up all the way through. Again, light source, once you've got it there, let's go back and I'll get this one up in terms, just to review these 2 guys here. So, there, yeah, that one and that one. Okay, we've got them lined up here. Let's do this, put those off to one side. This begins the formula of really setting things up. And for those of you maybe coming in late a little bit, I started the conversation today with this one. How to deal with, for example, these guys right here, the geometric solids, how they operate, what they work with, how they function, what light source does on them. Each one of those solids has a different, definite constitution as to how they function. And the beauty of it is that they all embody one simple principle, light to dark. And again, 3 sources of light before we begin to combine these shapes into newness. This stuff is coming in the next few future streams. But what's really neat to see about this as it comes together is how all 5 solids have one thing in common. They have a very uncommon constitution. They're all different, but they operate under the same premise. For example, I said early on in the stream, there's the product we might see changes, but the process does not. This is all why these solids are so critical. Notice how they function. Again, with the light source in there, light to dark, light to dark, light to dark. Same thing here, light source on the left, light to dark, light to dark. There's that little highlight blush again right there on Terrace, about we were talking about earlier in some of those marker sketches. So that's where I started today's stream. Then I went into a very important, I think, next step in generation was to get the direction down. What happens with light? How do you deal with that kind of simple, well, like a cube? Well, it starts by going from light to dark, and it goes from light to dark, and then dark to light. Again, explaining the 3 processes of light, how it influences any given shape. Now, this is a cube, but the same thing happens on all forms. Again, it's very common. And again, notice again, even in a one-point perspective, light to dark, dark to light. And that facing plane is critical because you can come in and blend that or wash that, and the same with the 2-point perspective to make it much more animated and have, as your point made earlier, Antares, much more life, much more animated, not so flat. So that was the sketch we did. And the next one we added on was this, just taking this very simple shapes, putting it into practice. Notice, dark to light, light to dark. And again, that plane change, so it just all of a sudden shifted, light to dark. Same thing here, light to dark, dark to light, same process we were talking about earlier. And that shape, that family of forms was compatible with those directions we were talking about on that page. Oops, right, let me move this over just a little bit. Right there, a little bit better, that's close. There we are. Though they begin to relate one to another. Direction is everything. In addition to light source, direction is very critical. As I said earlier too in review, one of the things important as we go down the line here in the next few weeks is all things that are horizontal, render horizontally. All things that are vertical, render vertically. That was displayed. And if an inclined plane takes into account which is the incline. Is it going right to left or left to right? You'll begin to go. It'll tell you how to start and where to start the process and where to start the marker, so to speak, and end the marker. So we'll get into all those things later on as we go down the line. And then last but not least, we went back into this whole idea of saturation and how to go back in and reblend and smooth out the forms as a result of keeping it very quick, very directional, very quick, very spontaneous, and above all else, very committed. Because as I said earlier too in review, once we get these shapes down, notice there's a lot of paper coming through here. What's coming, as we go down the line here, there's one sketch I did here, I think. No, I won't do it. I'll do it next week. The more we advance, let me just say this as best I can. The more we advance marker application, the less we use of it. You'll see that happening down the line. And I'm going to start moving into multiples and media changes that'll flavor it and give it much more dimension. So you're using the marker as a base, and then you're building up on top of that base multimedia. And I'll say that again with a lot of sincerity. Once you have the marker base down, you're not going to, it becomes a base. You're going to use, the more comfortable you are with it, the less you use it, and the more the media will take over. Most of the work I do, you see in my streams, it's very minimal marker work and a lot of drawing back into it. So I'll begin to repeat those phrases next week when we come together here. And one last comment here, to make sure I understand, today's sketches depicted a light source coming from behind the object, hence it gets darker and closer. Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, Antares. You're absolutely correct. I've always been a real believer in light source left, behind, or light source right behind the source. Never in front, and very little in the back, because it gives you more drama to work with. You can move it around much more fluidly, and it doesn't trap you into, how would I do that? If you start, for example, from the front and put light source onto it, you're going to lose a shadow. So I always like to go right and left and move it through. So it makes a lot of difference here. So does that help? That explanation help, Antares? Great. I hope. I'll just wait for your response, and we'll get things moving along here. Good stuff here today, gang. I'll be honest with you. I was very concerned about it at the start because there's so much to it. And I'm not the expert. I'm certainly not the expert. But I think the more you work with the volatile media like the marker, the more cautious you have to be in describing what it does and discussing how it does and then demonstrating what it does. So I try to do that best today in phase one, which is, if I were to capture today's conversation in one phrase, it's light source. That's what it does. That's good. Thank you so much, Antares. Interesting, hopefully, as a benefit, as an aspect of improvement. Is that what you mean by interesting? Hopefully, hope. Very cool. And while I'm waiting for Antares' response, I just want to thank him, all of you, for tuning in today. It's a very, very sensitive subject matter. And I'm not given to a lot of in-depth conversations and explanations, but I think in a case like this, you're dealing with an audience here that might be not familiar with how to work with marker, and I'm not being insulting there, nor discouraging. It's a difficult medium to work with, unlike a pencil. So it's really interesting how you've got to be careful in describing it, and then, but you can talk all you want to, but you've got to show it. You've got to see how it operates. So today, again, very simple explanation of light source, the solids, and then direction, how that all works. So thank you so much, gang. It's been great to have this on board today. And I'm going to close with this. Over the holidays, I spent a lot of time really thinking about this presentation as we started the new year. I thought about it an awful lot because there's an awful lot to cover. There's a tremendous amount of information that can get very, very intimidating in a hurry. And I don't want anybody out there listening to me or watching this thing come together to be, above all else, intimidated. I want you to be encouraged. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'm going to bring in some of my earlier work on markers. You will not believe, you will believe how bad it was, until I got to the place where a guy named Sid Mead came along and just changed the entire atmosphere of how to work with this stuff. That man was an absolute genius, and I'll never forget what he did for me. And I hope in time to come, you will not forget how hopefully I've helped you. So again, all the more reason to be very cautious, not fearful, not cautious in the sense of making sure you do the right thing, not to be almost fearful of what's the next step. And I think I'll close with this. When it all's said and done, we're going to learn in terms of time. Very simple lesson. We're going to know the end from the beginning, and there will be no mystery. We will know the end from the beginning. We'll have a vision there that is irrefutable and solid and purposeful and has life. I think we have a personality about our work that we should display that our personality in our work, not to be stifled by it. Comment here from Antares. It's truly so exciting to learn this different approach, even after being a working artist for some time. This is really fresh for me and filling gaps. Massively, Antares, you don't know how much I massively appreciate you. As I said in the beginning of the stream today, your work has come on like gangbusters. Keep up the great work and keep sending the information to me. If I can be of any help to you, you know I'll be here to help you. So thank you so much for your dedication. Respect you an awful lot. And those who are watching that are not chatting in, I thank you for your time as well. It's good to have you on board. I hope this made some sense for you today. I want to be very careful with it. And wrapping it all up, to me, it comes down, if I could put it all in one sentence, what we went through the last hour or so, it would come down to this. We're going to teach ourselves in time, solidly teach ourselves, a very simple, creative principle. We're going to take the complex and make it simple, and take the simple and make it complex. Works every time. Wish I'd have invented that comment, but I didn't. That was a Sid Mead. That guy, again, sorry to be redundant, but that guy was just beyond belief. Phenomenal talent. So I'm just trying to carry on his legacy, not doing a good job of it, but I'm doing the best I can with what I have. Thank you so much, gang. Hope you have a great week. And again, to all of you listening, Happy New Year. And Terrace, all the best to you. Happy New Year. Keep up the great work. And let's stay in touch. And I'll drop you an email here once we get down throughout the course of the week here to talk about some things that I need to get some information from you on. But again, as an overview before I wrap up here today, the overview for this stream series is going to be the following. Number 1, light source. Second story, hand technique. Third story, gesture methods. Fourth story, animation. So we'll put all those pieces together and have a whole lot of fun. Thank you so much, gang. You've reinstituted my confidence. You're great to be with. You've encouraged me. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. And enjoy your week. And again, have a moment, take a look at my website, drcontrast.com. And those of you listening, for example, is there something I can help you with? Please drop me an email at jim@drcontrast.com. I'll be happy to help you. And go from there. So all the very best, gang. Look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Take care. All the best. And always remember to never forget to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks so much, gang. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.